bumped last week. I'm not so sure how to do this anymore. Baseball drafts take precedence over some MMA show. You're listening to Cauliflower for the Ears. Your call number is 347-326-9741. 347-326-9741. So please feel free to call that number if you want to taunt us or bother us, or if you feel like you even want to actually talk to us like human beings. I guess we've been doing this long enough where I assume you guys know who you're talking to, but I guess I'll say I'm Brian the Butcher Brown and Michael Delicious Dolan. What's going on over there, buddy?
What's up, creep nasties? Happy fucking Easter.
Why, thank you very much. I'm so happy that zombie Jesus rose from the grave for, I believe, somebody's sins. Or did he get nailed to the cross for that? I'm really not all that sure. I don't know how the story goes.
Tomato, tomato. I just got to say, the guy who's I'm more impressed by, I've seen this trick before. B. Brown did it. B. Brown was dead at one point, and he had actually risen from the dead. And he's done it with much more class, much better looking, and I got to say that his beard is fuller and more fantastic.
It totally is, I mean, I might not have the bronze skin that Jesus did have, but I will say I died for someone's sins. I really can't recall. The night's a little hazy, but, I certainly manned up and came back, and I believe I tried to put the paramedics in a chokehold, the guy who was in front of me. So, I did a lot more with my rising from the grave than Jesus ever did. So I thank you for bringing that up. I didn't want to bring it up because I don't like to brag.
Well, I hear you, but, at the end of the day, it's pretty amazing that Christ and Antichrist, how similar they are, in the sense that both have died, both have come back, both have creepy beards. He was a carpenter. You decided to become a plumber. I mean, it's really very, very interesting to see, how correlated the two of you are. And they're really just two trains running into the night, which just shows that the devil can take on all forms.
Absolutely. The parallels are quite amazing, but I do believe I should have the lead in quite a few things, I'm probably a much better person than people. I've most certainly probably, helped people out more than Jesus ever did. And, I'm really tired of hearing about him come Easter. And how about we just start? I mean, mine happened in June, so either give me Easter or let's just start something in June.
Well, I agree. And another thing as well, you both fancied the whores. Him, Mary Magdalene, and I'd say, you, some of the ladies of the night that can be found on Highway 36 in Keensburg or East Keensburg.
Well, and you know what? And here's the thing. I'm also cleaning up the streets because that's usually the last anyone ever hears of them. So,
that's true. That's true.
And I'm not saying I've done anything wrong. I'm just saying I've helped better their lives. I've helped them out. I've put them in a better place. I've laid my hands upon them, and then, therefore, they went on to bigger and better things.
Well, he is risen. Well, when you say bigger and better things, that certainly that has to be the after effect. It could not be that sweet, sweet Irish hog of yours.
Absolutely not. I'm glad you pointed that out as well, because I pride myself on honesty, and it is a sad, sad sack down there. So definitely more B-sack than cock,
Well, that's okay, my man. They can't all be winners. As long as your cock-to-ball ratio is extreme in one direction or the other, it's better than just having a tiny dick and then, two little peas hanging. So.
I didn't say that I was packing the balls either. I'm just letting you know what's going on down there. It's just a shit show altogether. Yeah.
Then you'd be in that other category, my man. Apologies.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm just special in every which way possible. So, how was your Easter, sir?
It was amazing. I was in Philadelphia, the city of sisterly love. It was amazing. It keeps getting trashier every time I get there.
I've never liked it.
I did attend a university there for 2 years. I graduated from Temple University in the glorious, illustrious northern Philadelphia. Beautiful landscape, absolutely beautiful. I got to tell you, there was nothing like my orientation when I got there, and we were sitting in an auditorium, and they proceeded to run through, and they said, "Okay, now when you get robbed on campus, the best thing to do is to just give them your stuff." And somebody raises their hand and says, "Do you mean if?" They said, "No. when you get robbed on campus by one of the 14-year-olds that live in the surrounding areas, the best thing for you to do is to just give them your stuff. They probably don't want to have to hurt you because then, they're not going to be able to rob anybody in the future. Dude, they had it like permaday in The Simpsons there. At nighttime, it was more illuminated at nighttime than it was during the day. But I got to respect those boys because, to be honest, I'd be pulling in, around 7:30 into the parking garage to head in for like an 8:15 class, and those boys are just on their grind, dude, straight slinging on the corners. I mean, these are up early, dude. So the stereotype's not true. They're not lazy.
Mm-mm. Well, no, see, that's the big misconception. That's the misconception about laziness. But, I understand the lights. But I'm assuming you probably worked really hard and got a scholarship to go to such a fine establishment.
I did. I laid the groundwork like most esteemed individuals who have gone on to become President of the United States at the illustrious modern-day high school, which is now known as modern-day preparatory academy. So all you losers who went to a normal school, you did not go to a school like I did. And Brian Brown attended there for, I believe, what was it, 3 months? Did you live?
Believe it or not, they let me finish the year, but they certainly requested I do not come back and do not finish. And then when my parents inquired, well, is there any way you could come back? And they said, yes, but if you decide to do that, he basically can't do anything but sit and face a blackboard and not even move, talk to anyone. So the restrictions on me knew it wasn't going to fly. It was going to be at like $4,000 right down the drain. So they decided, let's go to North, let's start afresh. And I'm not saying I didn't get in any trouble over there, but let me tell you something. A lot more understanding to my way of behaving.
Yeah, I was going to say, you didn't get in less trouble because you were doing less shit. It was because they just didn't care, which is baffling to me. Because I attended Modern Day for 2 years. I did a different high school for my first 2 years. And I was like a straight A student, my man, when I was at my first high school. Well, at my first high school I was.
Oh, okay.
And, pretty much I was just playing sports. I hated the school, so I was just playing sports and, doing my work and whatnot. And I went to Modern Day where all my buffoon friends had attended from grammar school. So I went over there, and it was unbelievable. About a month in, or maybe, it was 2 months in, because I made the honor roll the first semester.
Oh, my God.
For that
Congratulations.
That just means you got to show up, basically. So I get there,
so I didn't
and
find it so
homework easy. Dude, I'm handing my homework in, and one of my buddies turns around finally, all pissed off, and he goes, "What the fuck are you doing?" I said, "What?" And he goes, "I'm tired of handing your homework up, dude. What are you doing your homework?" And I said, "I don't know what you're talking about, dude." And he said, "Listen, this is Modern Day. We do nothing and we get C's." And I look at the teacher, and the teacher pretty much just nods, shrugs, and then walks to the front of the room. I was like, all right, that's it. From that point on, man, it was crazy. I had teachers literally bifurcate the class in the beginning of the school year. They would say, anyone who would like to learn, please sit in the first 2 rows. Anyone who would not like to learn, please move to the back and try not to be too much of a disturbance.
Jesus. Well, it's good to know that good money's being spent for that type of an education. Dude, I went there my one sole year, which we just went over. I failed 4 subjects to finish out the year, and you're telling me that everybody else was on that just sit there and do nothing and you get C's. Why am I special?
You know what? I don't know, man. Because again, with the behavior and stuff, like it was unbelievable. Like the things that we got away with. Like literally, I'd be upset when the weekend came because school was literally just a place that I went to go hang out 6-7 hours a day. My buddy John Kelly would walk around with a Poland Spring bottle full of vodka and would just be shithoused by second period. Just full
you
on
gotta pass the time.
Yeah, well, you got to, man. It's important. I had my teacher, going into my senior year, at the end of my junior year, I had taken Latin because my parents were still under the illusion that I would go to an actual accredited university after high school, and they wanted me to have 3 years of a language because that's very important for the board. So I took Latin, completely ruined the learning experience for everyone involved, and I had the teacher make me a deal. He said, "Listen, I will give you a D if you promise not to take this next year. If you do not enroll in this class next year for a 4th year, I will pass you." And I said, "You know what, my man? You got yourself a deal."
I never had such deals made to me. I was
an athlete, They needed, no matter how much they hated me, they needed me. They needed me on the baseball field and on the basketball court, dude. It worked out great.
All right, well, I was going to say, all I did was play football, and they had a horrible football team anyway, so believe me, I wasn't really all that special. They threw me off the team, like, halfway through the season, and that was the end of it. After that, I was like, well, you know what, now I've got nothing to hold on to, so, I might as well just dick around and not do anything.
Now I'm just going to start getting in trouble immediately after school instead of the 2-hour buffer I had where I had to go to practice.
Show up for those. Well, that's how I met Dominic, actually. I think it was at a Saturday detention. I mean, and Billy was already kind of friends with Dominic, but I remember Coach Sicardo had me and Dominic raking up the parking lot. And, we had, like, this small talk that all of a sudden we just fucking couldn't stop laughing the rest of the day. Like, because, of course, I was one of those guys, like, I don't want to talk to this fucking clown. But, then he just had me in stitches fucking, like, halfway through the detention. And I was like, all right, this is cool. This kid's fucking cool. I'm going to try to get Saturday again next week.
I'm sure you succeeded. I'm sure you got an A in Saturday.
Absolutely, and then because that was still when I would go to like detention. Because when I went to North, like they're like, you got Saturday detention. I was like, well, no, I don't. I won't show up for that. So then they'd go, well, you're going to get suspended. I'm like, well, that's fine. That's my goal. So might as well just bump it past the Saturday. Let's go straight to suspension because I'm telling you right now, I'm not going to show up for any of this. So that's pretty much how I handled it over there. I sort of made my own schedule. I dictated whether I was taking suspensions or not. And then all of a sudden, senior year, apparently I had too many absences and excused absences because apparently that's a finite number. Like when you get suspended and everything, you can't keep getting suspended. Apparently, you have to go to school a certain number of days in order for it to count.
That, right?
And well, this is what the vice principal told me. And he was like, "Listen, man, for you to have any chance of graduating this year, he goes, you got to finish out the remainder of the year, and I just don't know if you can do it." And so I somehow managed to not get suspended, and I made the the minimum quota for days that you had to be in school. And like I've said before, I'm not 100% sure if I did get the diploma, but I did what I had to do. So if I didn't get it, I think I do deserve it.
I think so too. That's really that's really just a heartwarming story, and I got to say, it's the story of America, my man. It's all immigrants. I know, my grandfather when he left Ireland, and then my grandmother came over later. I know that was the dream they hoped for. They hoped that their grandsons could pretty much just be, dickheads.
Shitheads.
And just mess around and do whatever they want and just get pushed through the system, I mean, in modern day, the teachers couldn't do too much because the 2 years I was at the school, each year a different teacher fucked a student.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
I don't think that, well, I'm sure it happened in North, but I don't ever remember it actually happening in North. Apparently, modern day is better in that respect.
Exactly, but it's also modern day at the time was probably about 400 kids. So a lot more was going to be brought to the surface. You know what I mean? It's a lot harder to hide something. One, when there's 400 kids in the school, and two, when people walk in on you hitting the girl from the backside. So those are two ways we don't keep discreet. But that was the only reason I went to school, to be honest, was because of just the the uniforms.
Absolutely.
That part, yeah.
I did miss that. But let me tell you something. At least when I went to school, I don't know if the dress code, if there is any dress code in public school anymore. Some of those girls, the girls that kind of look like moms when they're in high school, somehow they've progressed in age quicker than everybody else, even though they're still your age, and they were just walking around with their titties popping out and everything with push-up bras and stuff because they were just trying to attract that older guy. So I don't know if public school's still like that, but I got to say, in some regards, the uniforms were better over in public school. But, of course, across the board, you had to suffer a little bit.
You know who would look amazing in the schoolgirl outfit is Alistair Overeem. I would have to say, if there was a category, at the end of your senior year, you get all the superlatives. And if there's one that says, most changed, I would have to think that Alistair Overeem would probably win the most changed category from his freshman year to his senior year. And we actually got a little bit of transparency as to why this last week.
I don't know if I agree with you. I think Alistair, as I've said before in this program, I've said it, it's on record, that he looks exactly the same today when Chuck Liddell was twisting his head around and knocking him out over in Pride. So I don't know what you mean there, pal. I don't know if I can agree if he's the most changed.
Well, and I think high school is the best example of it where, as you had just intimated, different people grow at different rates. And I know many different people that actually when they were in their late 20s, went from being 200 pounds, maybe 185 pounds, to having to cut weight to make 265. I mean, that's just, the good God doing his thing. Some of us bloom a little later. Some of us need to wait for the balls to drop. Some of us are born with a beard, like yourself.
A beard, and a cigarette I popped out with, my friend. That's how it all worked.
They like to call that the trifecta in the modeling world.
Well, I assume what you're referencing here, Michael, and I always figured it was Overeem since he's been a supreme athlete, since he's been a young guy, since he's been about 15 years old. And, all of a sudden he found what a lot of bodybuilders like to ingest, horse meat, okay? I don't know if this this positive test that I believe is what you're alluding to is what has changed his body.
It needs more horse, Carl. What do you think of this batch? It needs more horse, Carl. You don't remember that Saturday Night Live sketch? Will Ferrell,
I don't think I do.
Will Ferrell was running a farm, and they made glue, and he was basically having a commercial. So he's standing there, and he's like, and he's in like a cowboy outfit, and he's just like, we live and make one promise to you, that our glue will be made out of 100% mutilated horse. And then, he's just standing there smiling, and then you see, this guy just throwing things into this huge cauldron that's steaming. And then, hey, what do you think of this batch? He turns around and he goes, he takes his finger, licks the glue, and he goes, needs more horse, Carl. And the guy just throws the horse into the vat, and that's it. And I forget the name of the glue, but it was just like, Hennigan's glue. Guaranteed 100% mutilated horse.
That's fucking brilliant. Well, you see, right there, you're pointing out, obviously Will Ferrell's character was a parody, but some of these horse places they don't have that great a regulation. Maybe he got a hold of some bad meat, because Bill Brown one just pointed out in the room that he was 14-1 with his testosterone counts, which the commission, the Nevada State Athletic Commission allows a 6-to-1 ratio.
And I believe the normal ratio is 1-to-1. Like a normal person is 1-to-1. They'll allow a 5-point buffer, and this guy doubled it.
More than doubled it. You're talking.
I thought he was 10. I thought I read he was 10. So he was what? He was 14.
He was 14-1. The initial reports came out and said he was 10-1, and then all of a sudden that was somebody just jumping the gun who didn't get all the information yet. It was actually 14-1 was his sample rating. So I don't know. I think it was bad horse meat, Michael. What do you think it is?
I mean, I would love to be blessed with, just having a dinner one night and having it be bad horse meat, and it just has to be put on 80 pounds of muscle. That sounds like a good meal to me. I wouldn't put the adjective of bad in front of that.
It could happen. Remember how thin I was in high school? Look at me. I've gotten a hold of some bad meals, and look at the size of me now. You were
like Kate Moss in high school, dude. I remember one time, when you were in high school, you would come by the house to see my cute older brother, and I was just a little guy getting corrupted by my brother Kevin and John Lovostic, who was living with us at the time.
Jesus Christ, that's terrible.
And you would walk in, you'd be standing there all great, then you would turn to the side, you would disappear. You were like Kate Moss. I've been worried that I'd knock into you. Yeah.
You'd blow it. I'd fall over. This is what I'm saying. So obviously, listen, this didn't just happen to me. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I didn't go for this, is what I should say. It did just happen to me. I got some bad meals in me. They obviously must have been laced with some high testosterone, and all of a sudden I just packed on the pounds,
I didn't know any better, my man. That sounds like the baseline for a lawsuit.
So as you see, that's what I should be doing. I got plenty of time on my hands at the moment.
Yeah, you got to go over to Will Perdue and demand some money. And I ain't talking about the old center for the Bulls. I'm talking about my man who's in the commercial.
Oh, well, I'm glad you clarified that, because I was going to call Will Perdue up, and I would assume that he would be the easy way to get millions.
To be honest, I think he'd take your call before the old man Will Perdue would, because, the Will Perdue on the Bulls isn't doing too much, and I'm pretty sure, you know what, actually you could talk to the other Will Perdue, because since you are Jesus, he's in the afterlife, so you could channel him. I'd imagine Will Perdue's up there just cooking mutilated horse for everybody, just slinging it on a Tuesday night, Tuesday night's mutilated horse night.
What a piece of shit, but, back to the Overeem thing. This is fucking, crazy. We touched on it a little bit Wednesday, but that was the initial report that you were talking about, the 10-1 thing. I mean, this obviously fucking obliterates UFC 146, and Dana has already come out and said, now, he could just be saying this because he doesn't want to commit to anything right off the bat, but he's claiming that he isn't changing the Mir Cain Velasquez fight. So, obviously, if Overeem, who is supposedly going to be facing the commission, I think, on the 24th of this month, if I'm correct.
26th.
26th? Okay, the 26th of this month, which to me seems like he must think he has a good enough case, because why would he bother trying to get that license, to apply for that license? But as we've seen, the commission has rarely ever overturned such a decision. And, even though he can't be disciplined, they still have to approve his license that he's going for. So where do you see this going, dude? If Frank Mir isn't the guy that they're going to slide into that heavyweight title match, because Overeem has pretty much fucked this whole card, and quite possibly fucked his whole career for a guy who's been bragging that it's been all natural, that he put all his muscle on.
I mean, it's just a ton of things really flood to the mind. It transcends so many different areas. It completely, destroys him in this new contract that he just signed. I think it was probably a 4-fight deal, and he's 1 fight in. I mean, the best fight after the Verdum fight, his last fight in Strikeforce, when he eked out a win against Fabricio Verdum. And, they interviewed him, and he was just like, "That's how the pump does it, baby, all natural." Like, this guy it was like tongue-in-cheek. Like, it was unbelievable. Like, this guy, I guess he's a genius. Instead of avoiding the 10-ton elephant in the room, he just directly addresses it. But, I mean, it's really a shame. It was so funny when the news came out a couple weeks ago that at the presser, the 6 main guys on that card were surprise drug tested. It was Overeem, and it was JDS. It was Cain Velasquez and Frank Mir, and it was Big Country Nelson, and it was Big.
I was worried about Big Country. Big Country when I heard this.
Again, that's not so much a bad piece of meat as an accumulation of a massive amount of that. But I was just laughing, and I was saying to myself, God, if this guy fails his test, it's going to be amazing. And sure enough, he fails the test. And,
one guy.
Exactly. Literally the only guy who fails the test. Surprise, surprise. And, now I don't know what's going to happen. He's going in front of the committee, the athletic commission on the 26th, and, hopefully he'll have enough time to go to Holland and get his oil changed like he did last time in the Brock fight. But,
exactly.
Dana has said that he's obviously going to stick it out, and, he's not changing the Mir Velasquez fight. And, I don't know how much truth there is to that. I think Dana's been dealt a shit hand. He obviously can probably buy some time and try to scramble and find a replacement, because there's no way Overeem is going to pass this drug test. Because even if he does, what do they do from there? All that would do would be a negative drug test and a positive drug test. So, I don't understand how that one would just carry enough weight and trump the other one. Is that the case, or would he have to take it?
Well, here's the thing, Mike. When they took that original piss test, it's split up into 2 different vials, and they saved the one vial. It's called the B sample. And they only tested the A sample. Really, the only thing he can bring as many fucking clean samples as he wants. Supposedly, the only way for them to get around it is to test that B sample. And if that B sample comes back negative, or 6-to-1, because that's the ratio they allow, then he gets his license, no questions asked, and it was just a mistake. So I'm assuming that Alistair Overeem is going to come to that meeting with a gang of lawyers, pleading some sort of case that, that they feel is going to win, because I can't see that B sample coming back negative. That it was taken at the same exact time. So unless there was tampering, that B sample should be fine.
And how would
it be tainted?
How would it come back clean? Well, no, that's interesting. I didn't know that he doesn't even get a chance to go piss again. So he's just going to piss hot twice. And I guess that's the whole reason as to why they do the A and B sample, because then at that point there's no time for somebody to go get an oil change or do whatever. It's just literally going to be, this is your one sample. You can sit here and basically try to contradict what it says, and we'll have another sample from that day. And I guarantee you this isn't going to be Major League Baseball. This isn't going to be fucking Ryan Braun getting off on a technicality that the guy didn't make it to a fucking UPS store in time to send his piss sample. I just don't see how they possibly overturn this. So it really poses some interesting, scenarios.
I don't know. He hasn't requested yet for the sample to be tested, so I don't know if whatever chemical he was on, perhaps maybe it has some sort of a half-life where maybe it will dwindle on its own. So maybe him and his lawyers are being smart and have a certain number of days or weeks where they can ask for that sample to be tested, and then when it does get tested, it should drop enough. You know what I'm saying?
Maybe.
But I don't know enough about this kind of shit to know if that's the way it works, because I know they still haven't requested for them to test that sample.
Well, and what's the alternative if they don't eventually, ask them to test that sample? Because what is his game plan, just to roll in and be like, I'm here to put a formal request in for my license? Like, where's that line start?
I don't know.
And they're just going to be like, oh, sure, Mr. Overeem, you can just put in there and then pay $25 and you'll be licensed. Like, I don't understand what, and you're probably right, because Dana White came out and said, in order to be doing these drugs, you have to be an idiot nowadays.
Right.
You just have to be a moron. And he's certainly right. I think Overeem got caught with his pants down because it was the surprise drug test. They're professionals. They clearly, do know how long it'll be in your body. It was all timed. He figured that he'd just go to the presser, do his little thing, and leave. So I'm sure he knows to the day if there is some kind of window where it would expire, if it wasn't something that was, just perpetual and just going to remain in your blood, until you get tested again later and your body has a chance to kind of flush its system. Maybe he is sitting there and just saying, all right, let me just buy my time. But, whether he does or not, April 26th is the day, whether he requests it or not. That's, so he knows he's working towards the 26th. So if that, half-life, as you had referenced, I mean, I don't know if you're a doctor or I don't know if you're your diploma in high school, but it sounds like you're a doctor, to be honest.
I have performed minor surgeries.
Well, I think maybe you should get hired by some guys in the UFC as a cut man, or maybe a guy to put people on steroids, because clearly they don't know what they're doing.
When I was high as fuck, I usually would come home like fucking trip my balls off or whatever. I'd put the surgery channel on. So I'm pretty sure that if you needed me to, I can do a breast reduction. And also, I was watching this one where the guy had his thumbs ripped off, so they took his big toes and turned them into thumbs. So if you ever lose your thumbs, I should be able to turn your big toe into a thumb. So just call Dr. Fry.
Did they get into detail how he lost his big thumbs? I mean, my guess would be firecrackers, or did they not get into detail?
I wish I had that video. I would put it up in the chat room. There was a video that came out recently where this fucker blew his entire hand off. And the video just runs screaming, and of course his idiot friend, doesn't shut the camera off till right till the guy passes him with the camera. Then he realizes, holy shit, this is real.
Yeah. I have a similar story. I didn't lose my thumbs, but in one of my past lives, I worked at a butchering shop and catering operation, and I was working on it was a Tuesday morning, and it was the week of my eldest brother's wedding, actually. So the Yankees, he got married in October of 2007, and the Yankees the night before had just been knocked out of the playoffs. Oh. So I was very upset, obviously, and then the guy who owned the business, his dad would come and work, a couple hours, a couple days a week. Great guy, sweet old guy. So we're bullshitting, and he's getting all fired up. I mean, this guy's like 78, and grew up in Brooklyn. So this guy is a Yankee fan. And he's getting all fired up, and I'm talking to him, and I got the guard off the slicer, and I'm running it, and I'm just kind of I'm pressing a towel to it to just kind of clean it. The motion of the blade will clean it. You just have to wet the towel. So I'm kind of talking to him, half paying attention, and the rag got caught in the blade and pulled forward and just took a quarter inch off of my finger, off of the tip of my finger. So it was like, dude, it was this huge, just kind of like stump. And then, I shut the machine off, and I looked, and it wasn't bleeding at first. And I'm like, wow, I think I'm all right. And then I saw bone, and then I saw purple. And you being a medical doctor, you could attest. Purple is not good when you're talking about blood, because that's just certain levels, of deepness that you've cut. So I cut the tip of my finger off. So I'm like, oh, shit. So, I go to the sink, I'm washing it. I'm like, whatever. It doesn't hurt because it's beyond pain at this point.
Just cut the nerves off.
That's it. I cut all the nerves off. At least I've done it right. So I'm, and the boss's father is just like, oh, God, Mike, oh, God. Like, after I cut, my finger off. And I'm just like, Jimmy, calm down. It's going to be all right. So, I'm cleaning my finger up. My boss looks at it and almost passes out. And he's like, yeah, you might want to go to the hospital. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. So I call my old man. And I'm like, hey, what's up, dude? And he's like, nothing. What's going on? I said, do we have any Band-Aids at home? And he was just like, why is that? And I said, well, I cut my finger on the slicer. And he's like, well, how bad? And I said, well, the tip's gone. And he said, well, I think you might want to go to the hospital. I'll meet you there. I'm not doing anything. I'll meet you there. I said, all right, whatever, cool. So I'm about to leave, and the guy's name is Jim. We call him Jimmy. So I'm like, hey, Jimmy, did you happen to grab my finger off of the slicer? And he's just like looking at me, puzzled. And I said, I cut my finger off. And he said, I guess I panicked. I threw it out.
No!
And I said, what do you mean you threw it out? He's like, well, the blood was freaking me out, and your finger's sitting on the slicer, so I just, in emotion, just kind of swept it into the trash can. So I'm like, all right, well, the guy's 78, dude. I'm the one who cut my finger off. Between the two of us, he's the smart one in the equation, all right?
Hey, Jimmy, you got my finger?
Yeah.
No.
That was his answer. If he had said that, I would have respected it more, because at least it would have been impressive, because he's got his own sound effects in hand. But, so I go to the hospital, and whatever. But the ironic thing, the funny thing was that I'm sitting there waiting for them to, basically do whatever they're going to do to my finger. And guess what was on TV?
What was on TV? I don't know.
In the room while I'm waiting. What was on TV in the room while I'm waiting to basically have them put a needle into my cut and then basically put some bandages on it?
Oh, Surgery Channel?
No. ER.
The something?
ER.
Ooh, that's better.
I just thought it was very apropos. I said, no, these guys have some senses of humor, because I'm sitting here in the emergency room with 30,000 Mexicans with no health insurance, and at that point I was Mexican-American because I had no health insurance. I was taking the charity care. And they got ER on. And I said, you know what, if nothing else, these fucks got a sense of humor, and I like that. I dig that about them. I respect it.
Oh my God, dude, that's fucking terrible. So you didn't get the tip of your finger back, is what you're trying to tell me here.
I didn't get my finger back. Most of it grew back. It's just kind of, if you look at it on an angle, you can see that it's like kind of sliced off. It's not even. The one side of my tip of my finger's gone, and it's completely extended to touch. Like if I go to pick up change between that and my thumb in a tight spot, I just automatically drop it. Like my finger won't pick it up.
That's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah,
that's terrible, dude.
These are the things that make us tick, my man. And, this is what is waiting for you if you want to attend Modern Day Preparatory Academy. That's where I'm bringing this whole thing. That's what it's all about.
It's all full circle, people. Full circles.
Yeah.
I think I remember talking to Kev. I don't know if it was the same day or whatever, but I think I kind of remember being told, yeah, my fucking stupid brother just cut his finger off. So maybe I was with Kev that night when it happened. I have no idea. Something just popped into my brain. With that. So I just want to let you know that Kevy was not compassionate, if that is the case.
Well, that asshole has a story of his own. When he was living at Rutgers with Dominic from Eatontown and John the Boss to get another one, he was coming home in between finals, and he was running up the steps of their condemned shithole they lived in.
That place is beautiful.
He tripped when he was running up the steps, and he put his hands down to brace his fall, not realizing or noticing that he had a Snapple bottle in his hand. He proceeded to just smash the bottle into his hand and severed his tendon and had to get surgery.
Oh, fuck, I kind of remember that. Yes, that's why he's got that creepy bend in his finger, right?
He's got a really crooked finger there, man. It's great for picking your nose and your ass, but it doesn't do so well.
That place was a fucking house of horrors. I'm sure you've heard the story where he had to ladle shit out of the toilet to get it ready for the plumber, right?
I love it.
You've never heard that one?
That's like when you have a housekeeper and then your mom tells you to clean your room. My mom used to say that back in the day when I was a teenager. She'd be like, hey, honey, you got to clean up your room. The housekeeper's coming over. I said, do you understand how fucking retarded that sounds? Like, do you not understand why don't you just burn $30? It's quicker, and then you don't have to worry about her stealing jewelry.
Well, I agree with you there, but I'm telling you this right now. If I walk into a house and there's shit piled up in the toilet, I'm probably leaving. Or you're going to be paying me $5,000 to fucking even attempt to change your toilet.
Yeah, exactly.
So anybody out there listening, when you got shit building up in your toilet, you better not just call the plumber in, because you're either going to be paying through the nose or he's fucking booking. There's no fucking way he's going near it.
That's the definition of a courtesy flush, my man.
Well, here's what happened up there, dude. The toilet broke, and the animals, because remember they shared the place with a bunch of different people, including Gay Steve, and everybody just kept hovering over the toilet, just dropping their deuce on top of other people's deuces, like birds.
Fucking Mumbai? Does it sound like Vader?
Yeah, I don't know who the fuck would even fathom this, because there's no way. Like, I know your brother and Dom went to, like, the fucking, like, locker rooms and shit like that in the gym to shower and shit and everything like that. So it was the other people living in the house just fucking hovering over the thing, just fucking dropping fucking deuces.
Oh, that is so foul, dude.
And then your poor fucking brother had to put on those big giant rubber gloves that when you're washing dishes and get a bucket and you know Dom's fucking easy gag reflex. Dom's trying to talk to him through it and just vomiting into the kitchen sink.
Oh my God, dude, that is horrible. Even for me, that's horrible.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm a sick ass, and yeah, I mean, there are certain lines you don't cross, and you shattered it, dude. With that, that's ridiculous.
Well, your brother sometimes, you know, he fucking answers the call and he's got some brass balls, because I'm not even sure if I would fucking be willing to do that. And, you know, not much really gets to me. And that, I think, fucking just having to, because, you know, it probably had like a fucking nice hard shell over it from sitting there. He probably had to crack through it with the ladle, too, you know, just to start fucking.
Dude. I hope he had a jackhammer. I don't think the ladle can do it. There's things you got to worry about, dude. It's not just gloves you need goggles, because there's just no way you're not going to get any kind of kickback or splashback when you're chopping, when you're chopping broccoli. You know, it's just well, I think we've digressed enough for anyone that were remotely listening to the show. Even people who know us probably aren't listening, but. We'll go back to the task at hand. So, for those who just came in and, didn't leave, one, you're a sick fuck, because you probably came in during a conversation about ladling shit and you're still here. So you know what? I did
and
that.
And if you've got any shit stories yourself, remember, it's 347-326-9741. We're always up for the ladling shit stories.
We're taking all comers on here. But pretty much that's how JDS feels at this point. JDS is sitting here waiting for this asshole that just took a huge shit on a clogged toilet to basically be dealt with. And unfortunately, Dana White's the one who's going to have to ladle the shit out. And he's going to have to find somebody to step in and basically be that plumber that nobody wants to be. So Dana's already come out and has already said, as you had intimated earlier, I am not changing the Cain Velasquez and Frank Mir fight. That was supposed to be the number 2, the co-main event on that all-heavyweight card next month at UFC 146. So, I don't know, Dubs, and we can talk about it. I think Dana White's just sticking to his guns. I think he needs to continue to say that Mir and Velasquez are going to be fighting each other regardless. I don't know how it's going to play out, because it's tough to ask a guy who's already training for a fight and training for somebody to basically get a shot at the title on a month's notice. And you don't even want to deal with that, man. You work your ass off to get to a title shot, and then to not have enough time to properly train and properly get prepared, it's a tough thing to have to deal with. So they can go a lot of different ways, right? Let's throw it in the ring, right? I'll give my analysis, but I want you to really lay it on me. The guys I'm going to lay out a couple guys here for you on who could potentially step in. I want you to tell me why you want them there or why you don't want them there and how you think the fight would go. And this is who your cast of characters are. You got Cain Velasquez. You got Frank Mir. You got Fabricio Verdum. And you got Mark Hunt. Break it down in that order, why you do want to see that guy fight JDS or not see that guy fight JDS, and why.
All right. Obviously, I got to start with Cain Velasquez first. Now, we all know Junior Dos Santos beat Cain Velasquez, and not just beat Cain Velasquez, knocked him the fuck out in the first round. I think it was, 90 seconds or something like that that he ended up taking care of him. Now, of course, everybody can argue all they want. It was ring rust. And I agree. Cain is a great athlete for the heavyweight division. He will be back. This is his opportunity to fight Frank Mir to put him right back in the discussion, but I don't think he should have it because strictly he lost in such deciding factor to Junior Dos Santos when he dropped the title. So I really don't want to see Cain back there. We just seen that fight not too long ago. I do say I think Mir deserves it. He's on a 3-fight win streak. He's beaten some of the best. He's always been at the top of the division. He certainly threw his own name out there and said, I'm ready, I'm willing, and who wouldn't want to fight for the title? But Of course, Dana's sticking to his gun, saying he doesn't want to change the Mir and Cain Velasquez fight, which it could just be posturing, like you said, because why commit to it? And then all of a sudden, Alistair Overeem pulls off a miracle, and he somehow is able to fight next month. So it could just be that Dana doesn't want to say anything till that hearing's over, or maybe he is telling the truth. Mir and Cain are fighting for that number one contender spot, which would be a little bit shocking if he sticks to those guns. As for Werdum, again, JDS crushingly knocked out Werdum. I know it was, 4 years ago when this happened, but he beat him, and he beat him bad. And, Werdum has looked improved. His striking looked better, especially against, Big Country. We saw him open up because, even though I feel he won the striking game against Overeem and his fight with Overeem, it looked like shit. It looked like mainly pawing strikes, and then he was also laying on his back, smiling most of the time, trying to get Overeem to go to the ground. So, he did himself a disservice by not really showing a killer instinct in that fight. With Roy Nelson, he definitely showed an improved striking game. So, is it an intriguing matchup? Sure. Do I really want to see it? Not really. I want to see Werdum may have another fight before he gets a chance. But the last guy that you said, and I fucking rode this guy hard when he came into the UFC, and I really wasn't a fan from his Pride days, and I'm starting to think, like Franco pointed out a couple of weeks ago, how he had just, when he moved over from the K1 kickboxing, he came into MMA and started fighting the best of the best at MMA immediately when he went into Pride. And it was probably a great disservice for the guy. You brought up Mark Hunt, who, of course, I think is going to be 37 this year. So he really doesn't have that much time left in the sport overall. Some guys can fight into their 40s. But it's a rarity. Dan Henderson is trying to attempt it. Couture's the only guy who did it successfully, to my knowledge, so far. There are a couple guys out there, but they're all in smaller promotions, so that doesn't really count. You got to be fighting the best of the best for that to count. Mark Hunt has done a complete turnaround in my eyes. He came in and he lost his first fight, I think, to Sean McCorkle when he came in, which, even though McCorkle was released from the UFC, he's not really a joke. He's such a behemoth, and he's a pretty athletic guy for being a 6'8" dude and normally walking around at about 320 pounds. So he had to cut a lot of weight to get to 265 for the UFC. But you're a professional, that's what you got to do. So, losing to McCorkle isn't that big of a thing, in my opinion. Of course, McCorkle went on to lose to Stefan Struve, and I think Travis Brown, if I remember how his career went in the UFC, and then they released him. So Mark Hunt, of course, when it happened, I said, fuck him. This is the way it's supposed to go. Then out of nowhere, Mark Hunt has ripped off 3 straight wins. He's looked pretty good, in it, and really impressive against Czech Congo. Looked like he is a guy with dynamite in his hands. He's got a killer instinct. He is the super Samoan, so he's a warrior. And, there's this big grassroots thing and this Twitter thing going on where people are calling for it. And, Dana did say after his last fight, this guy is definitely in the mix. His record, of course, looks like shit when you're thinking about it, but overall, it would be one of those ultimate underdog stories. And I actually think he matches up pretty well with JDS. So I definitely wouldn't mind seeing this rocky story take place and put Mark Hunt up in the title match. Or worst case scenario, if Overeem loses his hearing and Dana's lying to us, Mir has to move up to the title match. Let's slide Hunt to fight Cain for a possible number one contenders match, because I know there's that card later in the year coming up in Australia, which if he gets through Cain, it proves that he's for real, and then maybe he gets the title shot. So I definitely would like to see that happen. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think it would be an interesting matchup, and not an easy matchup for Junior Dos Santos to get through.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. You certainly, it was a lot that I just asked you to lay on us, and you did a great job.
I was trying to sell it because I've got another theory, but I want to hear what you got to say first.
Yeah, all right. So I completely agree with a lot of things you said there. Cain Velasquez is one of my favorite heavyweights. I think the guy's a beast. He looked like he was unbeatable.
Well, you and him got those matching tattoos.
That's it. His is a little more impressive than mine. His says Brown Pride across his chest. And he had that in his Arizona State days as a wrestler, and I just could not imagine what that must have felt like to be standing across from that dude in a singlet with Brown Pride across his chest. The only solace I would take is that this isn't MMA or boxing, and this guy can't hit me. That would be the only reason I'd be remotely okay with that. Now mine, I got it across the back, and, mine's my family crest, and then I have the other one down there that says entrance/exit over my cramp stamp with an arrow pointing down to my B side, but that's neither here nor there. But So Cain Velasquez he's amazing. He just basically steamrolled through all the competition, including Brock Lesnar, and took the heavyweight belt a year ago this past October. And, I just don't think it makes sense to give Cain the fight right now, because to what you had just said, I mean, I don't think people are in a place where they want to see this fight. I don't think anybody thinks that 90 seconds is a realistic scope, that, JDS is that much better than Cain Velasquez. It just proves that that's what happens when you stand and bang with this guy, and Fabricio Verdum could tell you that as well. It's just not a good idea to stand and bang with this guy. I think the UFC would be better suited to let Cain fight Mir, or if you're going to move Mir in, let him fight somebody, because then he's basically going to be able to be built up again, and people are going to see him win. They're going to get excited. You can make justification, okay, maybe he got caught, he's back to his old ways. Because unfortunately in this sport, you could run off 10 wins in a row, and Cain pretty much did that. I think he was 9-0 going into the JDS fight. And, you lose one fight, and you go from being an unbeatable guy to, who gives a shit. And if you lose 2 or 3 fights in a row, you're done. I don't care what camp you fight out of. I don't care who you are and what kind of pedigree you have. The UFC has shown time and time again, it's what have you done for me lately. So
absolutely. Bader was on the chopping block, and he was undefeated. He lost 2 in a row, so you're 100% right there.
And he came up through the Ultimate Fighter, which, most of the time they give those guys longer leashes because they feel like there's a certain amount of, notoriety and accountability through that show that, one, people know the name, and two, I think the UFC has this, kind of complex that they need to vindicate these guys, so they let them stick around a little bit longer, because the knock on these guys has always been, if you went through the Ultimate Fighter, you took an alternate route. You took a shortcut. So, Bader, who was, a guy who hadn't lost, he looked great. He lost a couple and was almost done. So I don't think Cain would be there with another loss. I think for the Mexican-American demographic, there's too much money to be made for the UFC. But I don't think the UFC could get the marketing engine behind this fight that they need to in less than a month, let alone you don't have JDS or Cain having enough time to be ready for each other. They're both training for a UFC 146 matchup, so they will be in shape, and they're already in their camps getting ready and cutting weight. But to train for a guy of that level, for both of them, it's just, it's probably not the best move. Now, on the Frank Mir side, I'm a big Frank Mir fan. The guy's a huge personality. He's got an amazing career ahead of him on the spectators, on the commentary side, because I think he's one of the best commentators in the game. Anybody who watched WEC back in the day, he was amazing, and I can't wait for him to retire and we get rid of fucking Joe Rogan. And my boy Dolby and Mir could be going at it. At that point, it'll probably be like Kenny Florian and Mir will be the host, because they've been breeding Kenny Florian to really be their golden boy. But I think
Kenny looks like he's up to 190 at this point, so I don't see him fighting anytime soon.
I don't see him fighting either. UFC tonight, man, the camera may add 10 pounds. I don't think there's 13 cameras on him, so it'll be interesting to see. But the guy has defied the laws of the human body by fighting in 4 different weight classes, so you got to give him respect on that. But
I do.
I think Mir would be a great opponent for JDS. I think he presents the best challenge because he can take a punch. I mean, we saw Shane Carwin put him out, but outside of Brock Lesnar, who was basically out on his feet when Cain hit him anyway, nobody's been able to take shots from that guy. So I don't really hold that against Mir. And Mir's striking has gone from elementary to extremely acceptable as far as, the standards go, considering he has the jiu-jitsu game he does. So I think he'd be fine in that fight. And he's gone up even more so in the legend category because of what he did to Nogueira. He was the first guy ever
I missed it.
Well, he was the first guy to ever knock out Nogueira when he knocked out Nogueira in the Eliminator to become the interim heavyweight champion when they were fighting for Brock Lesnar's vacant title. And then he proceeded to rip off Nogueira's arm and shoulder, and he's now hanging over his 72-inch flat screen at his house.
And then proceeded to get up and dust himself off and fucking laughed about it. It was amazing.
And all he said is, I knew he wouldn't tap, and I knew he was going to make me do that, and if I were him, I would have tapped. He said that's basically what he said. He basically said, hey, he knew that I was going to do that, and I would expect him to do it to me. The only difference between us is I wouldn't let it get to that point. I would tap before I let some guy rip my arm off. But
absolutely.
I could, of all the people, I like Mir the most as far as outside of Kane. Kane's my favorite as a fighter, but I just don't think it's a good idea. I wouldn't mind seeing Mir going in, but I just don't think it's the solution for this shit sandwich Alistair Overeem has basically made for the UFC. I would like to see Fabricio Verdum as my probably the guy I would like to see go in there. He's my 1, and then another guy will be my 1A. Verdum I want to see go in there because of this story sells itself. Anybody who maybe is a novice in the sport or hasn't been watching for a long time, about 4 years ago, Fabricio Verdum was 1 fight away from fighting for the UFC heavyweight title. And this is right in the beginning of when the heavyweight division took off in the UFC. There was a long time when Tim Sylvia was ruling this place that it was just lacking any kind of superstar power and really athletic guys. And it takes nothing away from Arlovsky or Tim Sylvia because they were good, dude. I mean, I'm not, as much as I want to tool on Tim Sylvia, that guy is a fighter. He may get knocked out quicker now, but you know what? The guy willed himself to be a pretty decent fighter. So, you know, Verdum was climbing the ranks and was basically touted as the next golden boy for the UFC. He was a young Brazilian fighter before we really had Brazilian champions. This is before Jose Aldo came over from the WEC. This is right when Anderson started his push, and obviously Anderson you can't put in that bucket because that guy is just a different monster. Verdum came in. I don't remember who he was supposed to fight, but they basically scratched like a week to 2 weeks before the fight, and Verdum had no opponent. So what guy was it? Ed Soares. Basically, Ed Soares begged the UFC to give Junior Dos Santos a shot. The UFC wanted nothing to do with this kid.
Yeah, they didn't like him.
Didn't know who he was. Didn't give a shit. They only really probably let him in because Ed Soares at that time was managing the Big Nog and Anderson Silva at the time, so he had a little bit of clout. JDS comes in, throws a fucking uppercut from his ankles and lifts this guy off the ground like Mike Tyson will lift you off in Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, and just absolutely destroyed Verdum, not only beating him and ruining his shot at the title, but knocking him out of the UFC. So,
yeah,
I mean,
that was his last fight.
That's it. That was his last fight. He proceeded to go over to Strikeforce, and then we all know what happened from there in his Fedor fight. But you know, that is the story that's going to sell itself, dude. You can sell that story in 3 weeks, which is what's going to be the situation for the UFC. That is the best story for them to sell because you already have a body of work. You have built-in footage. You can show JDS knocking that guy out 60 times in the next 3 weeks, and it's just going to basically put it all together. The problem is Verdum's not training for a fight right now. He's fighting, Mike Murasau, who is a heavyweight himself and a Chicago police officer. I think they're fighting in maybe July, so I don't think he's at the point where he's probably ready, but for a fucking title shot, I think he'll get ready in enough time. And I know you don't give enough credit to him because you love Roy Nelson, but Verdum looked so good in that last fight. And you may say, oh, he wasn't throwing hard strikes and whatnot. I was blown away by his striking.
I said that in the Overeem fight. I said he looked a lot better in the Roy Nelson fight.
All right, that's what you were referencing. I just figured.
Yeah, I was referencing. See, I said so much shit and everything ran together. I might have steamrolled myself and somehow melded those two things. But I meant the Overeem fight, but he looked much better against Roy.
I mean, it was impressive how much his striking had come along between those two fights. So I don't want to see Verdum fight fucking Mike Murasau, who fights once a year, for the last 3 years. I'm sure he's a good fighter, but
he's undefeated.
I don't understand the point, though, dude. Like, that's a step back for Verdum. Verdum came in, and he took out Roy Nelson, who's a big-time gatekeeper in the heavyweight division and a tough out for anyone. Absolutely. And basically, he beat the shit out of Roy Nelson. He dominated Roy Nelson for 3 rounds, and he looked good doing it, and he did it in a way that was out of his comfort zone, that we didn't think that he would be able to.
Well, here's the one thing with that, though, Mike. I as much as I agree he looked amazing, he looked crisp, here's what happened. In the back room, if you look at the interviews, Roy Nelson and Nick Diaz are back there commiserating with each other, about their robberies at that UFC event, and Roy said he thought he took the second and the third rounds, and none of those shots hurt Roy one bit, is what he told Nick Diaz, and Nick agreed with him. He said, "I thought you won that fight too, man." So,
yeah, I can't believe that Roy Nelson wasn't going to admit that any of those punches hurt, dude. I mean, come on, what is he going to say at that point? Give me a break. Nick Diaz and him were probably sharing a spliff like they were in Kingston, Jamaica in that back room. That wasn't a smoke machine going off, dude. That was called the Purple Kush.
Well, you're probably right. I know they kind of. I don't know if they actually hang together, but they're very civil and do like each other outside of the arena. So it's not like they'll ever fight. So Nick can be his friend, you know.
Which is also amazing to say, considering Nick Diaz probably doesn't like his own mother. You know, I mean, so for him to like somebody, it's certainly an impressive feat. But I'd like to see the Verdum fight just because it makes the most sense and it's the least amount of shuffling to have to do with this card. We could put Verdum in, and then you can have the number one contender match between Mir and Velasquez, and then you have enough time to basically either have Verdum fight one of those, fight Kane or Mir, and there's the story in either of those, or you have JDS fighting the guy that legitimately just beat a number one contender. So it makes more sense at that point. The Dark Horse. Well, go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you've definitely sold me on it more than I was thinking. Because obviously, it's not that I hate Fabricio Verdum. I don't. I actually have enjoyed a few of his fights. I'm just not a huge fan, and just like you pointed out, JDS did dispose of him rather quickly. But everything you just said does make me feel it is the easiest to promote. But there are a couple more wrinkles in this story. Of course. Yeah. Right. Of course, the internet idiots, this is never going to happen, but they're all clamoring, just sign Fedor to fill in, which I believe Junior Dos Santos would fucking knock his head into the second row. I mean,
well,
I don't want to disrespect Fedor, but, I mean, do you agree with that? I just don't see that being a viable option.
I do. Dan Henderson is a Hall of Famer and has, a right hand from hell. But,
right.
I mean, Fedor cut a little bit away for that fight. He was probably like 220, 225. Dan was like 210. And he got knocked out. And, I mean, he got hit with a huge shot. But you're not going to tell me that he's going to be able to take the shots that Junior Dos Santos is throwing out there when nobody's been able to take this guy's shots. And he's throwing with that kind of force. Plus, you're obviously going to have to sign him to a deal that you haven't, Fedor to a deal that you haven't been able to sign for the last 4 years, then have him ready, and have him going against JDS. I just think it's too much to happen in too short of a time. If the fight were in a month and a half from now, 2 months, maybe, but I still think it would be an impossibility, man. There's just too many barriers and hurdles between M1 refusing to not be, a co-promoter in the whole deal, and with, Dana White being stubborn and just hating making those guys any kind of money whatsoever. I just don't see it being, a viable option. So, I'd have to disagree. I wouldn't disagree with what the rest of the nerds are saying. The Mark Hunt situation.
Well, that's not the only wrinkle, though. But to agree with you on your thing with the Fedor thing, I agree with you. The M1 shit completely has killed those deals in the past. That's what has been the roadblock. But Fedor is fighting in June, so he might be training. He might be ready. But you brought up Dan Henderson, and I'm sure you've seen this too. Dan Henderson threw his hat into the ring and said he would be willing to fill in that fight, take the heavyweight title from Junior Dos Santos. So this could also be the ace up Dana's sleeve, which I don't know if I really give Dan much of a chance in that fight. Of course, he's got that overhead right hand. But, is he ready? Is he fresh? Could he pull it off? I mean, the man's, 40,000 years old now. But obviously this man is just sitting around trying to find interesting fights, potentially title fights to add to. He wants to go out on an amazing legacy. It's obvious. So is this the ace up Dana's sleeve? Is this what he's holding back on?
It adds a fun and intriguing wrinkle for Dana, and you know what? It takes some of the attention off of the brevity of the situation that is the reality.
Right.
That they need to have somebody fill in. I would maybe even do it because it solves a couple issues. It gives you a fight against, fill somebody in for JDS. It's a huge name in Dan Henderson that everybody knows. it could make for an amazing story if he wins. You have these similarities between Randy Couture, who came in at 43 years old, and beat Tim Sylvia, who was the heavyweight champion, and now you got one of his lifelong friends, Dan Henderson, coming in at 42 and doing something like that. I mean, that could be interesting. You know, it solves the problem what to do with Dan Henderson. I mean, it solves a lot of things. But if I were to do that, man, I would be torn. You know, it actually is intriguing, but I would just give the shot to Mark Hunt, to be perfectly honest, because I think it actually solves all of the problems to where our other situations probably don't. It rivals Verdum because, you know, he's not training, I don't think, for a fight right now. Hunt is a guy who definitely walks around a lot heavier than he should be. Not that he wouldn't make the weight of 265, but, I mean, that guy has to, for a normal guy, probably has like a 12 to 13-week camp. Hunt probably needs 15 to 16 weeks, dude, just to kind of get his body in the place it needs to be. But, you know, he's completely turned things around. He's won a lot of fans over. He's won Dana White over.
Won me over.
He's won everybody over, man, and he's strung a couple wins together, and, you know, he really looked good in the Czech Congo fight, and it goes back to my point with the Verdum scenario, that it would have the least amount of collateral damage in the sense that basically you don't have to shuffle this card, which is what they need to avoid doing, because you've already fucked the main event, and that's been out of your hands. You cannot now go fuck other fights on this card.
Right.
You can't do it because you're basically cutting off your nose to spite your face. It's a shitty situation that you didn't create, so that's where Dana needs to harness his energy and, you know, calm down and not just be so reactive in the whole thing. He needs to just really think of what's going to make the most sense. You could sell a Mark Hunt fight, but I think you could sell the Mark Hunt fight as much as you could the Dan Henderson fight as far as the intriguing standpoint. Because what happens if Mark Hunt wins the fight? If Mark Hunt wins the fight, now he's a heavyweight champ. You got it set up where he can go fight in front of his countrymen in a couple months and have him defend the belt against the number one contender of whoever comes out of the Amir Cain Velasquez fight. Plus, everybody's kind of all over this guy's nuts right now. He's a huge name. He's been around forever. He's a striker. JDS is a striker. I think he plays the best into JDS's game plan, but I also think he's the most dangerous fighter for JDS to fight, to be perfectly honest, because he's the one guy out there that can put anybody out at any time, including Junior Dos Santos. So that's where, you know, that's where I think it would work out for the UFC. Hunt wins, holy shit, that's amazing, that's great. This is an even better story we're going to now be able to parlay and sell the shit out of in this guy's country, you know, in this guy's home country. And if he loses, who gives a fuck? Nobody thought he'd win anyway. It doesn't, you know, really change things too much, and then it just vindicates the Cain Velasquez Frank Mir winner, you know. And at the end of the day, nobody's going to be that surprised either way on how it plays out, you know. So I think it's really a win-win as far as this whole thing goes. I think that would probably be the best scenario, you know.
I definitely think so too, and there's not much to lose. And you know, actually, Mark Hunt I think is fighting Stefan Struve in that card, so he should be training already. But before we go to the break, Mike, I want to throw this scenario into the fold because now I haven't heard anything. There's no internet rumors. I want to start a rumor myself because I've never done it before. Okay. So, of course, I'm sure we've got millions of people. Oh, another guy just left. So we'll make that 999,999 listeners right now. And here's what I want to see. This is what I want to see because, of course, we've been mocking out Strikeforce in this stupid, ridiculous heavyweight tournament that they insist on finishing up, even though after that the heavyweight division's dead. And how about this? It seems like all the fires have been put out. The UFC seems like they're ready to rebuild that bridge with this one guy who is in the finals there, and I'm talking about the War Master Josh Barnett. How about this? They just scrap that fucking Grand Prix. Let Cormier in over here because you know he's definitely coming. They already said they might be open to the possibility of having Josh Barnett back in the fold in the UFC. How about this? I think out of everybody, because loves to take a lot of time off and then just show up at an event and just destroy the dude he's fighting. That's one guy who keeps his workload down and just shows up and he's a gamer every time. What do you think about that situation? They pull over, they say, let's go, Barnett. Not only are you coming back, but you can completely redeem yourself as long as you don't piss hot before or after the fight because that was why their relationship soured in the first place. and you take Overeem's slot, you get in there, and you fucking save this main event. What do you think of that?
The only concern I have with that is, does he currently have a license in Las Vegas? And if not, how easily can he obtain one?
No, he doesn't.
Because what happened that you had intimated was he beat Randy Couture for the heavyweight title and then failed his drug test and was then thrown out of the UFC. I think it would make sense because he's a guy who could certainly sell a fight in 3 weeks between his name and his
wrestling
ability
promos
on the mic. Well, that's it. You know, he's great on the microphone, but the best thing is he's legitimate. He's a guy who actually somebody could go in there and say, yeah, this guy has looked impressive for the last 3-4 years. You know, the question is, can he get off his cycle of steroids fast enough? I'd imagine he's probably like half to 3/4 of the way through his roid cycle right now. So
yeah. Well, I agree with you there. I'm pretty sure he can get licensed because I'm not 100% sure. I'm pretty sure that fight took place in California, the one with Couture, because I just read recently even his last slip-up with steroids was a similar situation that Overeem has right now with the California State Athletic Commission. He actually was never licensed, so their discipline that they levied on him, that's why he never showed up. And why when he did show up, he was, pretty pissed off that's still going on and everything, which, of course, the guy was just ducking and dodging the issue to begin with. But, just recently the California State Athletic Commission said they'd welcome him back with open arms, and he would just have to go, he would have to be subject to bodily fluid tests, not just even piss tests, which I guess he said he's cool with. So I'm assuming he could get licensed in Nevada. And like you said, the dude is definitely a legit dude. Of course, we know what he's going to do to JDS. He's going to hug him. He's going to pull him down. He's going to mug him on the ground because he likes to do that. Even when he knows he can finish the fight in 10 seconds, he'd rather mug the guy and make him feel like an idiot for a while. And then he's probably going to sit there and put him in the arm triangle. Or if JDS can maneuver around, he's going to take his back or his leg because he loves all those what do you call it, locks and mission holds, like ankle locks and key locks and shit like that. Who knows? We've never really seen JDS's wrestling or jiu-jitsu game, so maybe I'm not putting it up there as a test, but we all know Barnett is a legit dude, and I think he can get licensed. Now, of course, I don't have any facts to bring that up. I just want to throw that out there because I think it could happen.
No, and it's a fair point, to be honest. And on top of that, he's a guy who's proven he can take a punch, Barnett.
Absolutely.
I mean, he's been in there with a lot of, big swinging dicks in the past. And for nothing else, as much as, he's been back and forth with the steroid things and the bad relationships with Dana White. One thing nobody will argue, including Dana White, is this guy's a top 7, top 5 heavyweight in the world and always has been. And he's got a great, great wrestling game, great submission game, and he just has an unbelievable knack for not only taking guys down, but when he takes them down, he falls into like side control or like half guard every time.
Sometimes mount he gets into.
Mount. I know. The crazy thing is everybody knows it's coming. And it's no surprise every time what this guy's going to do, and it just doesn't matter. And it's not like, okay, this guy's going to come in and he's going to swing and he might catch you, like JDS. This is a guy that has a very specific skill set, and he's maximized his abilities and his potential in that area. And, it's impressive because everybody trains for it, and that's the only thing they train for when they're going to fight him. They probably even just completely abandon their striking training because they know that'll be there. And at the end of the day, he's still able to do it, and he's able to do it in impressive fashion each and every time.
Right, exactly, dude. And like you said, he can definitely sell the fight because even though we know what he's going to do, he's going to pull him down, lay on him. He's not really looking to strike. Before the fight, he's talking about, I'm going to fucking tear his head off. It's going to be a bloodbath. He's going to die in the cage because he just plays this character up. And then after he literally lays on him and chokes the dude out, he grabs the mic from people and sells it like it was the most exciting fight you've ever seen. So, when he wins, even if you weren't that entertained by it, you're entertained by when he hits that microphone afterwards. So, to me, I think it's an easy sell, but I don't know if the UFC has thawed in their relationship that much to go that far with Josh Barnett yet. But I think if none of these other situations happen like we were talking about and Overeem can't get through that hearing unscathed, that would make an interesting main event for UFC 146.
And like you had said, maybe the relationship hasn't thawed enough. It seems like it's going that direction because Dana White and Josh Barnett have played nice with each other since the acquisition of Strikeforce by the UFC. But maybe this is the best way for it to happen because they don't have a choice but to get over it, and then Barnett would be doing them a favor. So Dana doesn't have time to mill over it and let his ego get in the way. He needs Barnett as much as Barnett needs him. So it's just a quick way to say, you know what, forget it. put it behind us. The slate will be wiped clean because, you're doing us a favor and stepping in, and it's a guy who probably has the best shot of beating them, outside, more than Mark Hunt, I'd even say. Because Mark Hunt's going to have to play JDS's game, to where Barnett doesn't have to play his game at all, and JDS has to worry about playing Barnett's game, and that's going to make him more apprehensive on the strike. Because the second he loads up, he's going to get taken down.
Exactly. It's coming. But, I guess I'll hit the break, Mike, because, we could probably talk about this all night, but there is a preview we got to get to in the last, 45 minutes of the show. So I'm going to hit the break. So, everybody, we will be back after this. Or this. Well, maybe it won't play. Maybe we'll just talk through. Hold on a second here.
I like boners.
Yes! Second half, or, possibly already a quarter through. 347-326-9741. 347-326-9741. Give us a call. What's up, buddy?
What an amazing first hour, my man.
I know, right? It's an hour and 15, dude. Because, I don't know, this producer just had it just right. We got to give him a pat on the back because we're sitting at about 45, just like I said right now, after all that stuff with the commercial and everything. What a genius. Oh my God, did I lose you?
No, I'm here, my man. I'm just listening to you work.
Oh, thanks. I mean, I know your voice is so alluring and delicious and whatnot, but I got nervous there. I thought you dropped off. Whew. Be still my beating
I was just
heart.
hoping I wanted to create a scene like in Wayne's World when Mike Myers storms off from the big-time production and Garth is just sitting there.
Oh, God.
I'm having a good time. Nah. And then he's just sitting there and he's like,
yeah, that would probably happen because all of a sudden, that thing. I don't know how to sit here and try to get into a conversation with nobody about any of the stuff that we decide to talk about on the show. I think it would be a little bit difficult.
It would be, especially since our tri-host, Nick Frank, big time, didn't show up tonight.
Yeah, well, as usual, he steps up. He's got such a giant commanding lead in the fantasy. I know I've brought it up before, and I've said it before. I think we really got to cut him out of this event for his failed attendance because I know we weren't here last week, but that wasn't our fault. As I said at the beginning of the show, there was a very exciting baseball draft that involved the RotoExperts. And why wouldn't you bump a show like this to hear a bunch of guys probably, I'm sure it was exciting, but, as I pointed out, with our football draft, I know once we're about an hour and a half in, we want to rip each other's fucking eyeballs out and get the hell out of that house.
I can't imagine what that draft must have been like, dude. Unfortunately, I don't support our station and listen to it. I barely even listen to the playbacks of our shows, even to bump our ratings. But I got to imagine that was just absolutely ground-breaking, horrible shit last week.
It had to be. I wanted to pull it. I actually was going to try to listen to it because I wanted to do a little, work, as if I'm actually, versed in doing any of this radio show, well, I guess podcast for this, for all intents and purposes, stuff, and actually pretend like I was a professional. I wanted to sift through it and really find the gems that we could just play on the show and see really how exciting it was, because I'm sure we wouldn't have anything negative to say whatsoever.
Oh, yeah. No, I have no doubt that this is like Don Imus shit.
Well, in that case, then fuck, I'm going to listen to that as soon as we're done here. We should probably end now so we can listen. Fuck the picks.
That's what I'm talking about, man. The only picks I'm interested in is who's going in the 32nd round with these fucking geeks picking their fantasy baseball. And they're all personality, just sitting there like, I'm going to take, stop, Mom. I'll eat dinner after, Mom.
Is he still? Wait a second. I would like to actually listen to the guy who, as they're thinking this is good to do on the air, the dude who doesn't pay attention at all and just keeps picking dudes over and over again, because that guy's always at the draft.
No matter what draft you're doing, what league you're in, or what sport you're drafting, it always happens.
It's like, can I get Will Summertime Smith? And meanwhile, you made that joke in the fucking 5th round, and then nobody's paying attention.
Yeah, and luckily by the fifth round, I've had so many beers that I will just proceed to say the same joke 37 times, and then I will just kill Steve, a.k.a. Scott from Modesto, for no matter who he picks. I will just absolutely murder that guy. Franco, every single year, just when we leave, is just like, dude, he's like, you absolutely murder Steve. Unprovoked. I love Steve. He's one of the nicest guys in the world.
I know.
For Franco to feel bad for a black man, you know I crossed the line. Because Nick Frank is a bigot. He's probably at a Klan meeting tonight, which is why he's not here. And, you know, he claims he's doing his seating chart for his impending wedding. But, you know, I'm not buying it, man. Wherever Nick Frank is, there's a cross somewhere, and it is ablaze.
Well, and usually when he's around, there's strange fruit hanging from the tree, too. But, you know, what can you do?
That's it. Normally, I thought that was you, man. It was wherever there's the fruit hanging from the tree. You're the serpent in the fucking Garden of Eden.
I was wondering how are you gonna match the two, because I was like, Jesus Christ, I didn't think I've ever put that vibe out that I was going to be putting strange fruit in the tree. But I like what you did. You brought it full circle, because that's what we do here. We make sure everything's cohesive.
Fuck the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. It's called Modern Day Preparatory Academy.
Middletown North. What up? You want to pick these fights, Massive? Try to get back in this race?
Yeah, let's do it. Might as well.
We got 6 fights. That's the only reason why. I would love, believe me, I would love to talk about anything but, you know, I guess we've got a job that we don't get paid for to do, so might as well hit it up. UFC on Fuel TV 2 as coming this Saturday, and it's definitely, I forget who Alexander Gustafsson was originally fighting, but Thiago Silva has stepped up to save the main event and give the Mauler an opponent that's definitely a name in the light heavyweight division. But, of course, his last fight, he was popped for steroids himself, to bring it back to the steroid conversation. He's not going to be aided by such substances here. And, Dolan, I'm going to get your opinion first, because since there's only 2 of us, it's hard to play, you know, volleyball back and forth with, you know, me saying it, then you. I think I'm going to have you go first here.
No, that's fair. And, I mean, it's kind of impossible for you to piggyback off of my picks when you go first. And it's hard for you to do that when, you know, the 3 of us aren't here, when it was you and Nick and I aren't here. So
I like how I tried to make an excuse.
Well, then whatever works, man. Now, whatever ribbon or bow you want to put on it, man, it's all the same heap of shit. We all know what it is. You're gonna, you know, piss on my cupcake and tell me it's raining. That's fine, dude. I'm willing to play the game. My mom's trying to commit. But, you know, yeah, yet again, Franks has big-timed us. He doesn't show up for the picks. He promises he'll get his picks to us by the end of the week before the fight starts. I wish, you know, you would think on a fantasy show and a radio show, 2 things would happen. One, the host would be prepared, and we would be able to recap what the fantasy scores are, therefore that they would, you know, really carry some weight. And 2, that the third host would show up after 6 fucking weeks of no events. The 1 week that we need his pick, he wouldn't show up. And I'm going to ruin the story for you. I'm going to tell you how the book ends and make sure you don't see the movie. Neither of them are happening here tonight, all right? So the Bukkake and the Dookie conversations are over. The high school escapades are over, and now it's time for Dubs and I to put picks out like they carry any weight, like Franco's not going to attend and just fucking douche us next week. Now, with that, Alexander Gustafsson was supposed to be fighting Little Nog. That dude was set up to fight. Little Nog, this is about the 2nd or 3rd time he's had a fight that was either a headline fight or, you know, somewhere in the top 3, and he had to pull out. You know, I know a lot of people out there wished my father had followed the same Big Nog, Little Nog strategy and pulled out. But unfortunately, he didn't pull out 4 times, and that is why you have the 4 Dolan children. But, you know, Alexander Gustafsson is fighting in front of his brethren, his countrymen, the Swedes. This is
got a lot riding on it.
A lot, man. I don't know if they've ever been there, the UFC, but this is certainly the first time in a long time that the UFC has gone to Sweden. So it couldn't have worked out better for the UFC that Alexander Gustafsson has basically skyrocketed in the last 8 to 13 months and really become a guy who's in the conversation as being, you know, up there for a title shot. So this really worked out. He last fought on the December 30th card, the Alistair Overeem and Brock Lesnar card. And I don't even want to digress, but that's really amazing that Overeem failed his test because, that's why he fucked the UFC. He signs, he fails his test, and before that he dismantles their biggest pay-per-view draw on Brock Lesnar, who then proceeds to retire and go get paid $5 million to be in the WWE for 1 year. And now they have nobody to fight JDS, and Brock Lesnar's gone under contract with somebody. But, Alexander Gustafsson looked amazing in that last fight. He fought Vladimir the Janitor Matsushenko, who is 78 years old. But, he actually was a training partner of Lord Race for Mortal Kombat back in the late 1800s, Matsushenko was. But he can still fight, believe it or not. And Gustafsson looked amazing in that fight. He came out and put Matsushenko out in the first round, which is really what Gustafsson does. I believe he's 13-1, Gustafsson is. He's got 9 KOs, and he's got 8 finishes in the first round. So of his 13 wins, he's actually finished 12 of them. He's got 9 KOs or TKOs and 3 submissions, and 8 of those 12 finishes have been in the first round. So it's no surprise what Gustafsson's looking to do here. And if I were him, I'd be pretty upset that Little Nog went out because I'd much rather fight Little Nog. And I know I don't respect him as much as I should, but I'd rather fight him than Thiago Silva because Thiago Silva was put on this fucking planet to destroy things, dude. That guy is an absolute monster. You look at him, and that guy scares the shit out of me, dude.
I agree, but I don't know if I'm that high on him. I'm sorry to interrupt you there.
No, but I know what you're saying, dude, but let's break this down. If you get rid of the roid test, and, again, he was probably roiding the entire time, but just was able to time his cycles. But, Thiago Silva was, again, right in the mix for a title shot. He is 14-2-1, and the one is the no contest when he shattered Brandon Vera's nose and was bitch-slapping him in his last fight.
Right.
His 2 losses are to Machida, who basically they ran into each other when they were both buzzsaws and just walking through dudes, and he got knocked out by Machida at the end of the first round, and then he lost the decision to Rashad Evans where he almost came back and knocked Rashad Evans out in the third round in the last 20 seconds of the fight. So I don't know why you would think that Thiago Silva isn't I don't know, you kind of had a reaction like he's nobody and he's not anything that's good. I mean, is that what you're saying, or you just think that I'm giving him too much credit?
Believe me, I think he's a handful for most people in the division, but to put him up that high. I mean, I know he came back and almost beat Rashad, but as we've discussed before, Rashad got a suspect chin. That's the only one reason why I see why Rashad is going to have trouble against Johnny Jones. But, Thiago Silva, sure, most dudes is going to smash, but I don't know about this kid. I don't know about the Mauler. I think the Mauler is the real deal here.
Yeah, and I do too, man. I think Gustafsson is awesome, and he poses a lot of problems for a lot of guys, including Thiago Silva. I don't think Thiago Silva is like a top 3 light heavyweight, so don't misconstrue if I'm chubbing up and spitting on my hand, which I am. But I'm not saying he's this unbeatable guy. I'm just saying that of the 205-pound guys out there, especially between Little Nog and Thiago Silva, I'd much rather fight Little Nog than a fucking pissed-off, motivated Thiago Silva who's basically fighting for his UFC life. Because if he comes out and loses this fight, he's probably done. But Gustafsson is got all of the makings to beat him because he's extremely long, he is a world-class kickboxer, and he's fighting in front of his home country. So I don't really see what else you can pile on to this fight for Gustafsson. And it can go either way. That could be a motivating factor, but that could also be a detractor for Gustafsson, and that could work against him. It seems like he's a really just humble, centered guy. Again, he's 13-1. His only loss was to Phil Davis via submission, and we all know Phil Davis is a massive expert at submissions. But even though I'm joking, Phil Davis caught Gustafsson, and that was when Gustafsson was pretty much at the inception point of his ground game. Not that Phil Davis, is a world-class jiu-jitsu artist, but he is a world-class wrestler, so he was able to really, put him to the ground. And what did Gustafsson go do? You figure the kid was, he's won 3 in a row, so he was probably 10-0 at the time when he lost to Phil Davis, where most guys would hurdle up and not react well. And that's really, a gut check and a crossroads for anyone in any walk of life, whether it's sports or not. If you're having dominant success and nothing but success, how you react to failure is pretty much a good, indicator of your character. He went and immediately started training with Phil Davis. That's just the type of guy he is. He decided, what? I lost to this guy. He obviously is better in an area that I'm deficient, so why would I not go train with him? And that's exactly what he did. So I think Silva is good. I think they couldn't have had a better replacement on short notice than Thiago Silva because he's so game. I don't think he's going to be able to, to deal with Gustafsson. And as much as I'm saying that he's a beast and I love Thiago Silva, his will and his energy and just his moving forward at all times will be his biggest detriment in this fight. And it's not disrespectful to him, but that's why I have Gustafsson winning a first-round knockout. It's a combination of things. As I had just said, he's got 8 first-round finishes, Gustafsson does. And when you couple that with a guy who has a good chin and has an even worse, meaner attitude, he's just going to keep walking forward, and Gustafsson's going to catch him, man. I think he's going to catch him with the kick as opposed to the hands. And, I'm not getting cocky, and I'm going to pick that. I'm just saying, I think it's a first round. I think it's a first-round Gustafsson knockout. That's how I'm seeing it.
I got to totally agree with you. That's why I was surprised with the way you were throwing the props out on him. I guess I should have let you finish to really see what your point was, because I agree with you. He is a beast. He's a mean guy. He does like to throw, and that definitely plays into Gustafsson's hands. I mean, Gustafsson's a finisher. I think you pointed that out. That out of his 13 wins, the guy has mostly finished every one of his fights, except, of course, the one with Phil Davis. Phil Davis, of course, finished him, but even in that, you can't, fault the guy. He was definitely going out there to win a fight, and, Phil Davis, of course, out-wrestled him and won that fight. So, I mean, the dude's definitely a gamer. So he's going to go out there, he's going to be striking, and like you said, Thiago Silva, of course, not that he's a bad fighter by any stretch of the imagination. That's not what I was implying when I said really to you, But what I'm trying to say is that, this guy is the real deal. If I could say this about him, I'm going to call him the velvety white chocolate John Jones, okay? That's how good I think this guy is. I think he has potential to be that kind of a fighter in the light heavyweight division. I think if John Jones gets through Rashad and keeps defending that title, as long as you don't get, the super fight with Anderson Silva or the potential move up to heavyweight that, John Jones keeps clamoring for, that this is going to be the matchup. This is going to be the huge, huge matchup that the UFC is going to get in the light heavyweight division. And it's going to be Gustafsson and John Jones that are gonna rule that division for years to come. So if Gustafsson keeps improving, like you said, he went to go train with Phil Davis after he was put down by him. He's obviously gonna fill in the holes in his game, and he's gonna be a force to be reckoned with. So I agree with you, dude. I got Gustafsson first round KO as well.
Okay, that's fair.
I mean, I can't disagree with you. Like I said, I shouldn't have jumped on what you said to begin with, because your points were dead on. The aggressiveness goes against Silva, so I definitely like the pick, and we're in agreement, buddy.
Very good, though. And again, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I respect and like the bold statement of Gustafsson being to the point where you expect him to be ruling this division for some time to come. And I'm not being condescending, and I'm not just agreeing. And it's a bold statement. I would not put it in the same atmosphere and stratosphere as Anthony Rumble Johnson being the 185-pound champion in 2012, as our cohort Nicholas Franklin Frank has intimated in the past, and then made that as a fucking cold, hard fact.
But I do think that is, we'll say, an aggressive statement. Maybe that's the best adjective. And I'm not saying I disagree with you. And I'm curious to see how it's going to play out, to be honest. Because I do expect him to be a factor. I want to see a little bit more of a body of work because Gustafsson hasn't fought the best of the best. And that's not to take anything, away from him. But, I mean, Matsushenko is really good, but who else has Gustafsson, really fought? I mean, he retired Matt Hamill. There's no two ways about that.
He did.
Gustafsson's the one who basically retired Matt Hamill. And I think we have, if you can cue up the soundbite, the interview from Matt Hamill when he was talking about, what Gustafsson had done to him. Exactly. What else, Matt? What was your feeling on Gustafsson? What do you think of your movie coming out this summer? You heard it there, folks, and that's hard to argue. I dare anybody to not sit through 2.5 hours of that and pay $15 to see it. Sundance,
it's going to be fucking
come.
riveting stuff. It's going to be amazing. I can't wait till I get to those one-on-one interviews, because that's going to be the vignettes constantly.
Do you think that we'll like Hell?
Like, are you worried about it, or do you think there's going to be any kind of goodness that comes out of Hell? Like, I don't think it's going to be a great time. I just want to see how much of a disparity there's going to be between the paradise of heaven and where we're going.
Well, I think my feelings. I really don't believe in it, but let's just pretend it is real, just for this conversation. Here's what I think. What's that?
What's that? You don't believe in God, is it?
Oh yeah. I definitely don't believe in God. No. And so therefore I have to say that there's no devil either. But let's pretend there is. I think there's definitely going to be reservations. It's sort of going to be like backstage at a concert. If you're certainly in with the in crowd, you're going to have a little bit of an easier time. And you know what? You're probably going to get some beers, some nice grilled meats for your troubles, because I mean obviously it's going to be easy to grill them. And you know what? Maybe you're going to be able to pick on the retards down there. You know what I'm saying?
As far as that's concerned, man, if that's the analogy you want to make, you and I are basically the double D-chested women who love to suck dick. We are getting behind. We are getting backstage. They are waiting for us. They say, I want the redhead and I want the strawberry blonde, and we will be there. We will be there, my man.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that could also be a part of the whole backstage passes thing, but it's better than if
what do you think they're doing back there, my man?
Real.
They're not praying the fucking rosary, dude.
You're right. It's a party. It's a party. You know what? I'm going to get with the party because I ain't swimming in no lake of fire if it actually exists.
Well, they're just spitting out maps of Hawaii on chicks' backs, dude. That's what's going on in the backstage.
Oh dear. Oh geez. Well, it is what it is, and that's if that's where we're headed. I think we're gonna be all right. I think everything's gonna be all right. Trust me.
I think you're going to be all right on this one. They got a thin, candy shell.
Listen.
Surprised you didn't know that.
Okay, I know we only got like 20 minutes, but I'm going to let you know this vision that I had once, okay? And it was fucking,
How high were
believe
you?
me, I was fucking probably on about 6 tabs of acid, and I was actually also I was banging these. My friend Willie, he also had a problem with ADD, so he had this Ritalin bottle that he always kept with him, and so I took his Ritalins and stuff, and I was just chopping up pills of Ritalin and snorting them on top of all the acid I was on, and I literally felt like my heart was going to explode, and I thought in my head, I don't know if it was real or not, and I literally thought my heart was stopping and skipping beats because out of nowhere I'm sitting in the basement and all I keep doing is going tick 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 tick, and then I would stop and I kept doing this for over time and time again, and he goes, dude, what the fuck is your problem? I'm like, my heart keeps stopping. I said, I'm just trying to keep time with it. But fast forward, I finally go home and I'm just sitting in my room and I had this fucking vision that me, my buddy Willie, and my buddy Adam, we were just chilling with the fucking devil, and he just had us in the palm of his hand, and we were fucking his dudes, and he was just fucking having a great time laughing with us. So trust me,
wow.
We're okay. Yeah.
That doesn't sound like a vision. It sounds like a flash forward, dude.
Yeah, my ceiling was bleeding and shit and coming down on top of me, and that's the thing that all of a sudden popped into my head. It was fucking really, really awesome. It was
yeah,
really
that's a
awesome.
premonition, man. That's not like that. Actually sobered me up right there.
Right. Well, see, the thing is, I started laughing hysterically because this, as the ceiling was bleeding, before I had this vision, which all of a sudden made me be able to laugh and just deal with things. Like, what was going on, the ceiling was going bloop, bloop, and, like, bleeding down on me, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I started hearing, like, these fucking nails on the windows just going, like, this heavy breathing. So at first, I was really freaked out, and then that vision came, happiness ensued, and I was able to regroup and have a decent night then.
Well, thank God. I think that's a perfect interlude to our second fight of the night.
Well, sure, the All-American, Brian Stann, I'm sure has stories of this himself, and he's fighting Alessio Sakara. I'm going to go first on this one. Alessio Sakara, he's a tough dude, Legionaris, as we know is his nickname. He's had some wars in the cage. Usually he goes on a losing streak, then he'll go on a winning streak, losing streak, winning streak. I really think they kind of tailor-made this bout for Brian Stann because Sakara is definitely an aggressive thrower. I think Stann probably hits harder than him. Is probably a better boxer than him. And if it does hit the ground, I feel that Stann definitely has a better wrestling game than Alessio Sakara. So I'm going to take Brian Stann here with a second-round KO. I think Sakara is tough enough to make it through the first round.
Interesting. All right. I wouldn't be surprised that they did tailor-make this fight for Brian Stann. We've said it on past shows, and it hasn't changed. He's an impossible guy not to like and not to be motivated by. The things that this guy has seen and done outside of the octagon far surpass what most of us will do in life. And, he's won one of the highest, honors that combat has to offer. And he saved multiple lives. So all joking aside, the guy is an amazing person, and he's a pretty good fighter as well. He's not somebody who's been fabricated and kind of, made in a laboratory by the UFC. It just kind of worked that way. He is 5-3 in the UFC. He was the former 205-pound champion over in the WEC before the UFC had dissolved that division when they had purchased the WEC. He's coming off a loss to Chael Sonnen. Chael is just a different monster. He's, a great wrestler, and he wound up submitting Brian Stann, who, always comes to fight, and you'll always get everything from him. He said he would love a rematch against Chael Sonnen, who he is friends with, and because he just feels like, he can learn so much from the loss, and he feels like he already has, and that's just kind of the type of person he is. Prior to losing to Chael Sonnen, he was on a 3-fight win streak. He had beaten Mike Macenzio via submission, and then he had knocked out Chris Levin in an amazing fight, and knocked out Jorge Santiago, who, again, is no slouch and, is a world-class submission specialist. So, Stann has extremely powerful strikes, and as I had just said, he was the 205-pound champ in WEC, so he's a very large middleweight. Sakara, he's definitely an excellent fighter. He's a game fighter. He himself is a pure striker. He does have some pro boxing experience. He's 8-1 as a pro boxer with 6 knockouts. So, he does kind of play into what Stann wants to do. The fight should come down to Stann's power versus Sakara's technique, in my opinion. I think that although Sakara is the better striker, I think Stann is the better MMA fighter at this point. I think he's faced elite-level competition. I feel like he's just a cut above Sakara, to where Sakara is extremely streaky. I feel like Stann is just, as a base, a better fighter. And I think he's something like maybe 4-1 since he's gone back to Greg Jackson's camp, where he started his training originally, had left that camp and has since come back. So just being surrounded by all those great athletes and being a guy who's so open to learning and being in a place that, he's just constantly being tested, I think that's really going to work to Stann's, to Stann's strength. I kind of going on a limb here, and I'm probably going to regret it because, I'm talking about Stann's power versus Sakara's precision, but I think they both respect the hell out of each other because it's in their nature, and I think they're going to be cautious, which is why I have Stann winning via unanimous decision.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, man, and I know I'm like basically contradicting every selling point I just made between how good of strikers they both are, but I think they both know that. And I don't think either of them are going to put themselves in a bad spot to get
knocked out. I think the only way it would happen would be because of Stan's just pure power if he catches Sakara. But again, Sakara is a pro fighter. He's been a pro boxer. He's a guy who can take punches, and his fortitude and heart have never been tested, which is really the only reason I'm going that far to say that it's going to be a decision. I really think Stan's going to win, but it's just a matter of I think he's going to basically cut it out. It's going to be a great fight, and I got Stan winning. You did.
Wow, I think that's ballsy. I mean, I guess I could see it. Like you said, the one guy's got technique, the other guy's got power. But, speaking of power, I guess I better power through the rest. We got 15 minutes left. So the next fight.
Real quick, you had Stan first or second round?
I had him in the second round. I think Sakara. I agree with definitely your point about him being the technical better striker, but I think Stan's power wins, and I think he catches him in the second round.
Yeah, no, I just want to write it down.
All right. In the welterweight division, we got Paulo Tiago, who we know is on the Brazilian task force to take down, I believe he's like on their special forces unit. So that alone tells you he's a pretty badass dude, because he moonlights shooting people for a living. But he's fighting Sayar Badhaderzada, I believe is how you say his name. I'm not 100% sure. His nickname is The Great, or The Killer. I'm going to call him The Killer. And I'm going to hit this one up first, too. I think Tiago, as I pointed out, he's a tough dude. He's definitely a tough out for a lot of guys in the welterweight division. He's got a pretty good ground game. He's got good submissions. He's a highly touted dude. He's 24-1. He's on a 6-fight win streak. He's another Golden Glory prospect who they had their hooks in and were trying to leech money off of him. He just left. Similar reasons why Overeem finally left the company when his eyes were open to what was going on. But I know they've been trying to get this guy in the octagon for a while, but injuries have been piling up. They really have a lot of faith in this guy that he's going to be a pretty big deal. So I don't see him finishing Paulo Tiago, but I'm going to go with my gut here and say Badhaderzada wins unanimous decision against Paulo Tiago, because Tiago's a tough out, especially when it's your first fight and you're coming off injuries, and he's probably got some ring rust on him.
All right, that's interesting enough. Paulo Tiago is an excellent fighter. He's 14-3. Pretty much just exploded on the UFC scene by knocking out Josh Koscheck in his debut. Koscheck was getting pretty cocky, and at that point was not really training his wrestling. He was purely training hands, and he had knocked a few guys out, so he really fell in love with just loading up with that big right hand, and he got caught. It's just kind of something that happens. I think he's definitely a guy that probably didn't respect Tiago at that point, just because of how Koscheck is. Tiago is a really good fighter. Beyond beating Koscheck, he has kind of traded some wins and losses. He did win his last fight in August in Rio in front of his countrymen. He snapped a 2-fight losing streak. But he lost to Martin Kampman and Diego Sanchez. And when Diego fought him, Diego looked the best he's ever looked at 170. So I think those are actually things that may have benefited Tiago. Extremely well-rounded. He's got excellent submissions, and he really has a wide variety of them as well. 14-3, 8 sub-victories, and listen to this breakdown, dude. 3 arm bars, a rear naked, a guillotine, an anaconda, and a Darce choke. I mean, you don't get more well-rounded in a submission game, and we've seen the submission game as all point, counterpoint, and we see excellent submission guys like the Diaz brothers and different guys always rolling out of submission. So when you have a guy that can basically put you in a submission and already knows what you'll do to counter it, and he's going to steer you in a direction to lead and set up his next submission, that's a guy that is extremely dangerous. I'm not even going to say his last name, but, Sayar is on a 6-fight winning streak, as you had said. He's finished 16 of his 20 victories, dude, which is no fucking joke. He's got 10 knockouts and 6 dubs. He beat John Alessio. He beat the weaker of the Santos relationship. He didn't beat Cyborg, so I got a little less respect for him. But
I thought he fought Cyborg. I saw that on his record, and that's why I jumped on his nuts.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. He's a good fighter. There's no two ways about it. I just don't know if, I give a lot of credit to Tiago for, the experience of the Kampman and Diego fight. They're both extremely good, but I give the edge in power to Sayar. I just don't know about the ring rust, and it worries me. I think I'm going to regret the pick, but I got Paulo Tiago winning via second round submission.
Wow. All right. All right. That's not, I don't think that's a terrible pick. I mean, it's possible. He's a tough dude, man. Second round sub, you're saying?
You got it. And what did you have?
I had by unanimous decision. I'm pretending like I'm paying attention and writing it down because, I usually don't. So I figure I'll try
all of us, I am, so.
Don't mind the showcase. Oh, no, that's Press Your Luck. Whoops, I screwed up. I just had to put the music behind it.
We're talking about this.
But, there we go. There it is. I figured I'd play that behind us. There we go. Next fight pitch, Dennis Sievers making his 145-pound debut versus Diego the Gun Nunes. And I'm just going to pretty much give you my pick here because we're down to about 10 minutes. I fucked up on time. I apologize, people. We all know I'm not a huge Dennis Sievers fan, so I'm picking Nunes. Second round sub, and that's the main reason why I'm picking the Gun Nunes. Also because he was in line for a title shot till Kenny Florian dropped down and took him out of it. So, the guy's definitely a good fighter, the 145-pound division, and Seaver, I think, is biting off a lot here, having his first fight against this guy in 145.
No, it's a fair point. Nunes is getting the unfortunate position, and unfortunately he's taken on this role as, let's take a guy who's had a lot of success at 155, let's drop him to 145, and let's have him fight fucking Diego Nunes. That's what happened with Kenny Florian. Unfortunately for him, it's happening with Seaver. This is, for me, all about how the weight cut goes for Dennis Siver. I don't know how it's going to go. I mean, he's a compact brick shithouse for 55. I don't know how he's going to do with 45. You can see it can go either way. Kenny Florian's the guy who's fought it as high as 185 and dropped to 45. He's a tall, lean dude. Siver's smaller, but he's more compact. So I'm very curious to see how it's going to go. Again, Nunes, excellent fighter, former training partner of Jose Aldo, who has since left. The training area. He's still Team Blackhouse, but he's not with the Pantheorians or whatever the fuck they are. Nunes has got 6 submission victories and 5 knockouts, so he's certainly well-rounded. Again, it's all about how Siver's weight cut goes. I don't feel good enough about that because I'm just always weary. We've seen it a million times with your boy Jakey Poo and other guys who cut weight. It's just so taxing, and it normally takes a cut or two to do it. So I got Nunes winning via decision. I just think he's been
all right. That's kind of safe. I'm just gonna jot that down. But yeah, I definitely see Nunes taking that fight in some fashion. But moving on to the next fight, we got DeMarcus the Darkness Johnson versus simply John McGuire. Who you got in this one, Dolan?
It's tough, man. I mean, DeMarcus Johnson, a lot of potential. He came out of the Henderson Vinsting season of The Ultimate Fighter, the U.S. versus the U.K., lost to James Wilkes in the finale. He's 4-2 in the UFC. He beat Edgar Garcia and Clay Harbison. Lost to Matt Riddle and Amir Sadala, so no shame there. He trains with, Jeremy Horn, so you know that he's going to be well-rounded. You know he's going to be well-versed in the submission game. John McGuire, although he looks like a fucking doofus, he is a legit fighter. He's fucking 17-3. He's on a 6-fight winning streak. The question is, who the fuck is he beat?
Nobody.
He prefers the ground game. He's got 9 submission victories in his career. Johnson should be able to separate himself, though, with his striking. I just think McGuire's stepping up in comp. He's not ready. I got Johnson via decision.
Wow, all right. Well, I definitely see it the other way. I see McGuire winning unanimous decision. I agree with you. Johnson's, on paper anyway, he's probably has the better experience with the dudes that he's fought and everything. But McGuire, regardless, you might not be able to pick out a lot of people on that list that he's fought. He definitely fought who was put in front of him, beat him. He's been a champion in two different mixed martial arts promotions at the welterweight division. Again, I know they're not the UFC, but again, those were the best that they had to offer him. So the guy's definitely got experience. He's got championship experience, albeit outside the UFC. So I think it's going to be a tough fight, and I got Ed McGuire as a UD. I just think he's going to do enough to pull it out, and I just haven't been that impressed watching DeMarcus fight. So I feel that John.
I agree. He's very inconsistent. It's a matter of what DeMarcus is going to show up.
Exactly, and I just think that gives this guy an opportunity to, I believe he won his first fight, John McGuire, in the UFC. This is his second. It's a little bit of a step up in competition, but I think I see it going the same way. It's going to go to a unanimous decision for McGuire, but it could definitely go either way, so I don't think either one of us have a terrible pick there. So for all you fantasy players looking for definitive answers, don't look for them here.
You might want to check out the replay of that fantasy baseball draft if you're looking for that kind of analysis. It was on last week. We had to clear all channels for it because we got big timed again. First they big timers on the show, and now they're Frank big times us by not showing up. Where does it end?
Exactly.
If anybody wants to know why we're going to go to hell, it's because we've been smited and burned the whole way here.
It's just, if you're treated one way, it's just a fucking, it's like a machine. It just keeps producing the same stuff. You know what I mean? So we're treated one way, so we got to treat everybody else the other way, so everybody else feels our pain. Of course, we get punished in the end, but it'll be worth it. So, last fight on the card, feller. Brad One Punch Pickett versus Demasio, the Angel of Death Page. I only said it like that because it's a very dramatic nickname. You know, I think this is another fight, like I pointed out with the Brian Stamp fight. I think it's a hand-picked opponent to get Pickett back on track. You know, Page is pretty spotty. Anytime he fights anybody who's, you know, approaching the upper tier, I don't want to say the top of the division, but the upper tier of the division, he seems to struggle. So I definitely see Pickett getting back on track, winning here. But I got Pickett winning by a second-round submission.
Oh, Jesus.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I picked the exact same thing.
Well, we got other picks, so you can either change it or stick with it. We ain't the same on everything.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with it. I agree, man. I feel like they're kind of serving Page up here. I think he's a game fighter, but I think he'll be a perpetual top-tier, second-level guy. You know, I don't think he'll ever get over that hump. I think they expected a ton out of Pickett at 135. There was maybe more name than action we've seen at this point. And I think that division at 135, you know, once Uriah is done, what the fuck are they going to do? So they need Pickett to get a few under his belt. So if he can get a win here and then maybe win a fight or two, they can get him to go fight, you know, the champ.
Absolutely. So, you know, I mean, we got a couple minutes left, but yeah, you know, also I found interesting, I was looking up some information, I was actually doing some research today. Apparently Demasio Page is starting up a low-level mixed martial arts promotion. So maybe the guy's nearing retirement, and, you know, they know that the guy's not, his heart ain't in fighting, so they're giving him an opportunity to either steal one from Pickett or, of course, go out on a shield by, you know, being tapped out or knocked out by Pickett, you know. So I just, besides the fact that he's got a spotty record anyway, he's probably ready to move on to his next phase in life, perhaps.
The level of competition and the schedule these guys keep, like, you know, I understand these guys always got to look for a future, and a lot of them open gyms and stuff like that, or co-owners of gyms, but, like, to take on an undertaking, like, you know, opening your own promotion and doing stuff like that, it's just got to take your attention away, and it's got to be time-consuming. So, like, not that I'm thinking that this guy isn't, you know, giving the proper amount of respect for his career, because this guy's, you know, top-level fighter, dude. He's in the UFC. What the fuck have I done with my life? But, you know, I just think that if he's looking
talking about? We got the show, dude.
That's true. That's true. But, you know, he'll never make as much money as we do doing this. So, you know, I just
sit
think
on our aces. Woo!
Yeah, we're in elite level shape for ice cream eating contest.
We got about a minute and a half before I got to hit the wrap up, Mikey. But you know how I always, every once in a while, bring up Ben Askren's name, and you know, this is why I really don't go into depth, even on the Wednesday show, which I claim we try to talk about Bellator and we never do, because it just doesn't seem to really be that much of an interest to people. When we have talked about it, that's been the lowest amount of listeners we've had, so maybe we won't talk about it. But Ben Askren, of course, the reason why I don't talk about him is because even though he's a champ and he's pretty dominant, he's a fairly boring, lame, prey fighter. And he was quoted as saying after his win on Friday that he's happy with his defense, says he's not going to go toe-to-toe with someone with one-punch knockout power. He's just not going to do it. He said, if the crowd doesn't like it, how about they stand in front of Douglas Lima for 25 minutes, and I guarantee he'd finish them all. So I definitely agree with him, but as you can see, he says he definitely feels the striking's improved, but not to the level where he would stand with a guy like that. Do you, you know, real quick before I wrap up, do you agree with this stance or disagree with Ben Askren on this? Do you think he should be trying to, you know, move forward with the stuff that he's learning on the side here and actually try to implement some more into his mixed martial arts game?
I think he should, but he should do what got him there in the first place because he needs to get paid. These guys have a small window to make money. He's in a promotion that is, the second stepchild, so it's tough. He's got to keep that belt and be relevant and then, maybe move on to the UFC or build his name. There's time for that, but for right now, he's got to be king shit, so I can't really fault the guy. I'm not the one who's got to train and do it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, especially in the smaller promotions. That belt definitely is your meal ticket because, you're not going to get the level of pay not holding that belt that you could get in the UFC. So I agree with you there, but I think for him to, he has made guarantees that he'll probably be in the UFC. For him to catch their eye, he's going to have to start implementing some of the striking and go for a little bit more exciting fights. But I definitely agree with you, dude. He's got to hold on to that title. But I guess I'm going to wrap it up. So you got anything else to say?
That's it. Take her home.
All right, brother. Everybody remember to check out RotoExperts, even though they dicked us last week. Remember to check out the xlog.com. Check myself out, Cauliflower, the number 4 here at Twitter. I'll even promote Franco at nfrankrotox at Twitter. Dolo, he's just always on the street corner. So if you need him, pull up there. And, what more could I say? He'll help you out any which way you need as long as you got a hundy on you. Anything to say, Dolo?
And you got to give me a reach.
We're Cauliflower for the years. Tap.